Continuing chapter 3. All the Poles there who weren't Jews had to move out, and all the Jews who lived outside the ghetto in Krakow had to move in. I watched them moving in, wave after wave of them, huge groups of Jews climbing out of trucks and going to the Lwowska street. There were men and women and children, families, teenagers, and grandparents. They all wore Star of David armbands like us. Some of them wore the uniforms of the jobs they'd had too: policemen, postmen, nurses, trolley conductors. There were no jobs for Jews anymore. No jobs beside cleaning the toilets for Germans. My father and uncle had lost their shops, had their inventories seized by the Nazis, just as Uncle Moshe said they would. The new Jews carried their luggage with them, everything they owned in the world, and they looked around with big, worried eyes at the buildings and streets of their new home. They were probably hoping that things would be better here than wherever it was they came from, but everything that had happened over the last year has taught us that things always got worse. There were a few empty flats left by the departing Poles, but not nearly enough for all the new people. My parents came out onto the street and invited a family to come and live with us. The Leskis, a family of three with a 7-year-old boy named Aaron. We gave them my bedroom and I slept in the sitting room. Other families did the same. Then, as the days went by, more and more Jews poured into the ghetto, not just from Krakow now, but from the villages and towns outside the city. We took in a second family, the Rosenblums, and a third, the Brotmans. The Germans even made a rule: every flat must hold at least 4 families. I no longer had my own bedroom, nor did my parents. The children had one room, and the adults were divided between my parents' bedroom and the sitting room. Only the kitchen was shared by all. There were 14 of us in a flat that had been cozy for only 3. All I ever wanted to do was to get out of the house and go play with my friends. It was far too crowded outside at home, but my parents wouldn't let me go outside for fear I'd be taken up in a work gang. Any time the Germans had work to be done, like scrubbing toilets or help building the wall, they grabbed Jews off the street to do it. Father was taken all the time, sometimes even mother. The Nazis even took people out of the ghetto to work somewhere else in Krakow. Sometimes they never returned. This will all be over by summer, my father told us. We'll just have to make do until then, he said. He was my father, and I wanted to believe him. But I wasn't so sure anymore. It was January 1941. The Germans ruled Krakow. I was 12 years old, and for the first time in my life, I had begun to doubt my father. Chapter 4. I had always thought it would be fun to have a brother or sister. That is, until I spent a few months living in my little apartment with 5 other kids. The bickering, the fighting, the whining. You'd think that soldiers in the street, and synagogues burning, and days with nothing more to eat than a moldy potato, and would be more important than who got to play with the doll, or who got to sleep by the window. But you'd be wrong. The nights were worse. I pulled my pillow and blanket out into the hall whenever the Rosenblum girls were arguing, which seemed like all the time now. I had to sleep on the floor, but I didn't mind so much. I would be sleeping on the floor here or there, and at least for now, I had the whole hall to myself. If we had to take in another family, I thought bitterly, I'd probably have to share the hall too.